This week's tip is about the cast on. And for both the basics course and for the master knitting program, we recommend the long tail cast on because it provides a firm foundation but yet is pretty stretchy and is a neat edge. And this looks okay from this point. And I go ahead and I make my next stitch. And I'm just happy that I've done the cast on. I'm pleased with myself. But when I look at the stitches afterwards, this is what that loose cast on is going to produce. Notice that it's sloppy. The stitches could get snagged. They're over large. It provides no foundation for the base of my garment. It's so stretchy. Remember, a cast on edge should be about the same elasticity as the bind off edge. And this one is no good. Now, why that cast on was so sloppy is that I just put the stitches on and I was just happy. In some cases there's wide spaces between them, in some places there's narrower spaces between them. It should be consistent and even. Now on this cast on, it may look like my stitches are very tight and too tight in fact, but when I do it this time I'm going to make my stitch and I'm just going to give it a little tug. Make sure that the stitch is snug on the needle and that the stitches are close together. Now this cast on might be a little more difficult to work the first row of stitches, but it's going to give me something that looks like this. Notice in this sample that the cast on edge is neat and tidy. The stitches are approximately the same size. There are no overlarge stitches. It would be difficult to snag a stitch on this edge, and if I stretch it, it's about the same elasticity. Now while we're looking at this, this brings up something else about the long tail cast on. The long tail cast on produces the first row of stitches. And if I look at my cast on, you can see that these, the stitches that I've made, will be my first row. And when you use this cast on, one of the first decisions that you have to make as you work your next row is whether this is going to be the right side of your work with the little lines, or the bumpy side, the other side, is going to be your first row of stitches. Now for most projects, most of us assume when we're reading the pattern that our cast on, if we're using the long tail cast on, is row 1. And when we reverse to work actually the first row, that is the wrong side row or row 2 of the pattern. Now, does it really matter? For ribbing, not so much. I've got my cast on here. There's the right side, kind of the knit side, but if I turn it over, there's the purl side. Is that terrible looking? No. It's a matter of personal preference. It's which side you like best. The thing that you have to remember to do in a project, say if this were, sorry, still got a cold, ribbing for the sleeve, is that we're consistent. I would want it to be the same on both sleeves. If I select this for one sleeve, I should not select this as the right side for the other sleeve. So to sum up, when you're doing the cast on, do it very tight, give it a little yank. Now if that's hard for you, you can always do the cast on in a smaller needle. Just get a couple of sizes down depending on how loose you are, do your cast on, and then work the first row of stitches with your regular needle.